We are dealing then with the technique for producing the first stage of projection. We understand why we want to project. We understand that in the initial stages, at least, we use the phenomenon of our everyday life to produce projection. And the phenomenon that is very frequent for a lot of us is stress. The stress that leads to a mental sort of exhaustion that we all encounter in everyday living. And this is the time when we can lie down and rapidly relax in the way that I have described to you. If you have any sort of attachment out there in the world, it's going to be difficult for you to relax the appropriate muscles. If you are straining to hear, then there are muscles in contraction. If you are straining to see or to feel or to touch something out there, then they are in contraction. And so the secret of obtaining rapid relaxation is to have a rejection of all that's out there and to choose the time of the day when you feel most likely to want to reject it. That's the secret. And so this is the first requirement, rapid relaxation. The second requirement is to maintain an alertness. To maintain an alertness. Sometimes you'll find that when you practice this, that you just go off to sleep. That's no use at all. And so, this ability to maintain an alertness is important. How will you know that you are alert? And how will you know that you are making some sort of progress? The answer is that you begin to recognize certain phenomena that occur when the attention is turned inwards. One of the first phenomena is the setting in motion of the vrittis, the setting in motion of the vrittis. And the vrittis are a series of uncoordinated, haphazard, visual flashes that herald, if you must know it, the onset of widely spaced alpha waves. But you, lying there with your eyes closed, rejecting the world, you don't want to sleep, you've had your night's sleep. You want to get away from the stress, relax and turn inwards. So you really shouldn't fall off to sleep. So you keep your mind alert. And at first the vrittis will occur without your knowing that they're there. And then afterwards, when the thing has failed, you say, heavens, those were vrittis that were passing through. Those flashing images were vrittis. And that is a good sign that you are achieving this degree of relaxation. Don't think at this stage that these flashes, these visual impressions, are early clairvoyance. They're not. They can be turned to that later. But in the initial stages, they are insignificant and unimportant, as it were, except to tell you that the process is beginning. What in fact is happening is that you are learning to get out of the physical body. You won't even know that the physical body has gone to sleep. I'll illustrate that in a moment. Somebody asked Alistair Crowley once on the south bank of the River Seine in Paris. They were in a little cafe. One of his friends said to him, "Tell us, Alistair, in as few words as possible, what do you mean by yoga?" He thought for a moment and he said this: "Sit still, stop thinking, shut up, and get out." That's yoga. In his usual cryptic way of saying things, of describing things. But let us think about this. Sit still or lie still. We understand that. Stop thinking. If you're thinking about something out there. Sit still. Stop thinking about anything out there. You've rejected the world. Shut up. Shut up the ears to the sounds out there. the clacking of the typewriter in the next door office. Shut up your eyes. Shut up all your senses to what's going on out there. Sit still, stop thinking, shut up, and get out. Get out of the body. That's yoga. We have learnt a very simple way of obtaining it. Of course, you're not going to achieve it immediately. You can't abuse the various processes that you have in your bodies for so many years and expect that you can handle it immediately. You can't be an avid person for sensory stimulus and then shut them off immediately. You're a person that has all your life wanted to have involvement in the world, wanted to be entertained. First it's television, and then it's reading, and then it's whatever it is. You're going to find it difficult. But every step that you take helps you along the path a little further in obtaining this ability. Let me tell you how I stumbled across this method. I undertook the study of medicine very late in life. I was already 33. It was 18 years since I'd been at school. And so I was in a class of youngsters half my age, and I had to be pretty fly with them. So it was rushing around the wards all day, drudgery, and then burning the midnight oil right through the night, studying. And everybody found it hard going. Even the kids were whacked out. Whenever we had a break in the wards, as medical students will, we used to assemble in the students' common room. We would lie there or sit there, and usually my group, kids would start playing cards, gambling. I would lie on the carpet near them. I would hear them fighting and arguing over the cards. I would just lie there and have what I used to call a doo-doos. I didn't call it a sleep because it wasn't a sleep, really. I just used to think I used to lay there. And one day one of the youngsters said to me, you know, when you lie down there, you go to sleep, don't you? No, I don't go to sleep. Oh, yes, you do. You snore. I said, nonsense, I'm not even asleep. How can I be snoring? Well, you do. This went on for several weeks, and one day I'd settled down, the usual method of lying there for 5 or 10 minutes. And after these episodes, I'd get up and I would amaze everybody by the way I could run them off their feet. I was lying there, and suddenly I heard this kid shouting, right, we've got you now. I said, what's the matter? He said, I've recorded you. You were snoring. So he played this tape back to me. And there it was. You could hear them playing cards and me settling myself down and my breath uncoordinated, suddenly slipping into a rhythm, in and out, and then deep breathing, and then the snore, the reverberating snore. Now that gave me pause to think. I knew I had not lost consciousness lying there. And yet, I was snoring. My physical body was asleep, but my consciousness was alert. And I knew that I was on to something, being a student of the occult even then. And so that's how it arose. And I suppose it was a few months later that I suddenly was aware that I could see the ceiling, even though my eyes were shut. Occasionally I could see the ceiling. And the strange thing was that the ceiling wasn't in the position that it should be. It was slightly different. And it looked as if it was in a sort of different dimension. And of course I was seeing the ceiling with my astral eyes from a slightly different position, and not with my physical eyes. So this is another signpost to you, where you have this ability to sleep. And a good suggestion here is to put your tape recorder on. Now, of course, if you're one of the perfectly ordinary individuals of the world who puts his tape recorder on to record himself while he's going to sleep, you won't go to sleep. You'll be worrying about the tape recorder all the time. In my early days, in order to maintain alertness and continuity of consciousness, I used to set a tape recorder off and have a spoken word on it which would gain my attention every now and again and stop me slipping too deeply into unconsciousness. That's a useful technique as well. But there you are. You must work this out for yourselves. The advantages of it are as I've described them. You can decide when to come out. You can decide when to come out. After a while, you can slip into the state very quickly, very easily. When I'm ready for it, I can do it in about 30 seconds. But normally it would take 5 or 10 minutes. And it's very good preparation for meditation. It's what we would call the part of meditation which is seating oneself. Seating oneself for meditation. So there is stage one, a very, very valuable thing for you. It needs time, persistence, it needs periods of practice and withdrawal. Then we come to stage two. Now stage two, you will remember, when the astral body is perhaps 10, 15 feet away from the physical. This stage of projection I don't recommend. It is not a platform allowing you to project further. To get yourself out there is difficult. It happens in accidents, as we've seen, because of the trauma, the blow, the traumatic effect of an impact pushes the astral body out of the physical. But to get up there is difficult because there's nothing there to desire. If you really could fool yourselves to desire to be one with a lampshade, that's fine. But generally speaking, there's nothing up there to attract you. And my advice to you, you can try it out, is to leave that stage out. In fact, it's very hard to get up there. If you are lying in stage one and you want to get up there, you can fool yourself into believing that you are, for instance, at the bottom of a swimming pool and struggling to get up for air. And then you can literally pull yourself away from the physical, but very frequently the cohesiveness of the etheric and the astral body is such that it's difficult. You have to fight your way up. So my advice is to leave stage two out. It has no practical value esoterically, and certainly none from the point of view of projecting further. But stage three is important, and I'm going to switch you back immediately to the example that I gave of my dog Pitatatita. She was several miles away. She was an object of my devotion. She was somebody, something that I could visualize very easily, as you would anything that you love, and that was the basis of the projection. So, now we have to try and produce this stage of projection. And how do we go about it? Well, we use the episode that I've described. So first of all, you've got to decide on a target. What am I going to project to? The target is important, most important indeed. Now, it's very, very easy to slip into a mistake here and say, well, if he can project to his old bitch dog, then I can project to my child, whom I love dearly. Well, don't do it with children. The exercise is really unsuitable to use a child as a target in the early stages anyway of your emotional attention. Use some other object or person of devotion. And you can, for instance, select some physical object in your home that you like. If you bought it, you had an affinity for it. And it can be a vase, it can be a statuette, it can be something in the house or in the garden that you have an attraction for. So choose right at the outset your object for projection. And for the purposes here, let us say that I have decided that I'm going to project myself, I'm going to leave my physical body and get to this silverware which is standing on the sideboard down in the lounge. So that is what I select. Now, what you need to do is, of course, to learn to know this object. Learn to know it so well that you can create it in your mind's eye. For oft whilst on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, the daffodils flash upon my inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And what you're trying to do, if you were going to project to a daffodil or a bunch of daffodils in the garden, that would be an excellent quotation to use, to carry out. I'll say it again. For oft whilst on my couch I lie, in vacant, nothing to do with the world, it's vacant, or in pensive mood, they, or the daffodils, flash upon my inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. So, what we have to do then is to practice visualizing the object. I can see it now with its squarish handle, its slightly tapered body, the lip of the jug, the whole state of that object, whichever it is that you're going to choose, to such an extent that you can look at it and turn away and see it. Look at it again and see it. And even when you're at the office, you can visualize the target that you're going to project to, exactly where it's standing, what it is like. See it from all directions. In other words, have your target or projection clearly established. So clearly established in your consciousness that you can call it up reflexly. It must be reflex. You can, just with a flick of the fingers, you can, there it is. I know exactly where it is. It's on the sideboard downstairs. I know its shape. I know how far it is, so on, so on. So that's the first thing to do, and that is to establish the target in your mind. Later on, when you have learnt to project to the target, as I'm going to tell you how, you can choose another one, further away. You can project yourself to the first target and then move to the second one. We will see that there are two ways of approaching any target in astral projection. Directly, which is a will way, and if you are on the will rays, the preponderance of will rays, you can always project directly to the target, through walls, through hills, valleys, anything. They're no impediment. If you are more on the love rays, it is easier to find your way to the target. Walk from your bedroom downstairs and take the normal passage that you would to the lounge and to the target. So there are two ways. All this you have to learn. You will find which is the most suitable way for you. So now you are practicing, perhaps for some weeks, and you now have the ability to visualize the target. The next thing to do is to hold the visual image of the target in your mind, in your mind's eye, for oft whilst on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, it flashes on that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. Put it there, for the inward eye. Desire strongly to be with it. It must be a strong desire. If you had a desire half as strong as the young man that assassinated the caliph, that would be enough. A strong desire to be with the object. And have all that just before you go off to sleep at night. Just before you go off to sleep at night. Sooner or later, you will find, if your desire is strong enough, and if you don't sleep like a hog, that you will be with the target. You will be out of body and in front of your target. Let me give you some examples to illustrate what I'm saying now. One night, I had gone to bed without my watch. My watch was downstairs on the table in the lounge, as could happen to any of you. And I need my watch. I do work at night, and I need the watch and so on. And so the last thought that happened to be in my mind as I went off to sleep was the watch. And it was downstairs, and I was ruminating, should I go down and get it? And the next thing I knew, I was down there in the lounge, trying to pick the watch up off the low table in the lounge, and a little astounded that even though I picked it up, the watch was still down below it. Because every object, ladies and gentlemen, worn by a human being, looked at by a human being, developed an astral body. Astral body. I was picking up the astral counterpart of the watch. The physical counterpart of the watch lay on the table. I was so astounded with this phenomenon that I awakened and found myself in bed. Another example. I'd gone to sleep with the slight smell of cooking in my nostrils. I'd wondered whether I had left the stove on in the kitchen, like any of you must have done 100 times. Could I get up and check and see if the stove was really on? Hell with it. Off to sleep. The next moment I'm in the kitchen. The stove is in front of me, glowing red hot all over. I'm so shocked with that I awaken and find myself in bed. I go out to the kitchen and I find the stove is on. But it's not red hot. I had seen the stove with astral eyes. And a stove that is hot, even if only mildly hot, is a stove that changes its astral appearance. And so when you choose your object or your target for your attention that you're going to project to, choose an object in familiar surroundings, because you're going to see the astral world from unfamiliar eyes. And it's a comfort to you to have your first projection in your own home. You will see things from unfamiliar eyes. When you're looking at an object from all directions, it vibrates. If you're looking at an object, as you do from the astral world, from all sides at once, it vibrates. It's a slightly different perception. But then, of course, you can still the object with your gaze. We'll talk about that later. So now we have the key to the third stage of projection. Projection to an object at some distance, a familiar object, which we have chosen. All under control, all beautifully under control. To illustrate this, however, let me give you an example of how this can happen to others under stress. Many individuals who have been dying of thirst in the desert have in their last hours had experiences of being at an oasis miles away and taking water in. Desire for water was so strong in them as they lay dying that anything to get to the water, and so the astral body goes to the water. And how often have you not gone to sleep at night thirsty and got up in your astral body in the night and gone to the tap and started to drink water in your astral body, and then woken up with that raging thirst? And this is absolutely a true phenomenon, and one which you can use to good effect in your own lives. So you have the basic elements there, and it's a matter of practice. Now we come to stage 4. And even if you never project astrally, everything that you learn about stage 4 is useful to you from a spiritual development point of view. Even if you don't succeed, what I'm going to teach you now is a good series of disciplines that will help awaken the eye of inner perception. And so it's a worthwhile procedure to adopt anyway. You will remember that the 4th stage is projecting an immense distance. If I want to check up when I'm on tour on my home, see if everything is well there, I will project across the Atlantic. It takes about 2 or 3 seconds. Several thousand miles. You can wander around your home, see if everything's fine. Of course, it won't be exactly the same. If there is an emotional situation in the home may be changed very differently, very much. There may be nasty vibrations there. There may be tensions which express themselves in objects which are linked to focus of attention and to emotional things, like the hot water boiler may be bubbling and boiling, not because it's been left on, but because it is the symbol of hot water, hot emotions. Do you understand now that when you go into the inner worlds, you must have an open mind and understand that things are different there, although they're very similar. And symbols, the understanding of symbols are incredibly important. And so already we're beginning to see that the process can be useful. To be reassured that everything is all right on home when you're thousands of miles away is a great help. Also, you can assist those you have left behind. A person who is ill, a relative, can assist them in ways that I'll describe later. So we're talking about stage 4, the ability to project great distances. I'm going to divide this up into factors so that, as I've tried to do the whole talk, so that you can put it down, even if it's only in your mind. The first thing is the development of the will. Now, in the 4th stage, you're going to project immense distances, and desire is not enough. Desire will get you 20 miles in 10 seconds. You've got 3,000 miles to go. What you're really needing now is a propellant. And will dominates the astral world. A person with consciousness in the astral world and strong will has nothing to fear there. Nothing at all. And so when you worry about the negative things of the astral world and the terrors and the horrors and so on, something has gone wrong in you. Don't go and blame the dark forces. I get sick to death of hearing people believe that they are the target of black magicians and goodness knows what. The only target that most people, 999 people out of 1,000, become target for is their own dweller on the threshold. Their own fears which actually exist in emotional and astral substance. Fear a spider and the thing is there in your aura. You're creating it. It has an umbilical cord to you. The more you fear the spider, the more it's energized with astral energy from you. You walk down in an underground or in the cellar to get a bottle of wine and some cobwebs go over your head. Ooh! And immediately the spider gets a jet of energy from you. The astral form of the spider is enlivened, and whatever you create as a matrix in mental image for him, he will flash into. That's your dweller. And I don't want to hear about your dwellers. They're yours. Keep them. And so the first thing that we require here is the development of will. Not only because it is a safety mechanism. I'm going to try and give the talk on psychic self-defense at the festival this week. Will is a safety mechanism, but here we need it as a propellant. Will get you to the target very, very rapidly in a few seconds. And so, one of the things you need to do is preparation for the 4th stage, and you can leave stage 3 out if you think that you can do 4, is to make an evocation of your will. An affirmation. I will go to that target. Nothing is going to stop me. I'm not going to allow anything in my life to stop me. And once I'm in the astral world, I will go to the target. Affirmation of will. Most important. Next, factor 2. First the will, then factor 2. This may take a year. But it doesn't matter if it takes you a long time, because you are doing work on spiritual unfoldment anyway. An evocation of the will, as has been taught in my books, is a very important thing anyway. So number 2 is learn to visualize your target reflexly. We've already done that in a little way in the previous section. Visualize the target reflexly, because you're going to create a condition in which you're going to be conscious in the astral world. And then you have to say, I'm ready to project. No good saying, who shall I project to tonight? Will it be my Auntie Margaret, or shall I go to the Taj Mahal? Or it's no good. The opportunity is gone. It's lost. You must decide beforehand what the target is going to be, and the moment that you are in the state of inner alertness with your physical body asleep, the target must come up. You must know what it is. Therefore, it must be there reflexly, reflex visualization of it. You have to be forearmed with it. Do remember that whether you're studying a photograph of the target or the target directly, you have to create it inwardly. This is why we beg you to learn to visualize. Many of you ignore the simplest techniques for visualization, which is poetry. I'm going to do poetry very soon now, the esoteric approach to poetry. Throw hither all your quaint enamelled eyes, that on the green turf suck the honeyed showers, and purple all the ground with vernal flowers. Bring the wraith primrose that forsaken dies, the tufted croto and pale jessamine, the white pink and the pansy sweet with jet, the glowing violet, the musk rose and the well-attired woodbine, with cowslips wan that hang the pensive head, and every flower that sad embroidery wears, bid amaranthus all his beauty shed, and daffodillies fill their cups with tears. The imagery in Milton alone. And daffodillies fill their cups with tears. There's a whole meditational theme there. To be able to, I don't care if you have to pick 100 daffodils, but learn to see daffodillies filling their cups with tears in here. If you did that in this lifetime, if your life was frustrated by the most unholy karma, and you just learned to visualize a few flowers inwardly, believe me, your life would have been well spent. There is no excuse for throwing away a life by not knowing what to do. Let this be your first reserve if you don't know what your soul's purpose is. Visualization is a meritorious first reserve if you don't know what you have to do. So there was number one, the evocation, development of the will. Secondly, the ability to visualize, to see inwardly the target. And thirdly, to reorganize your life so that you sleep lightly. Sleep lightly. This is not the problem that you think it is. There are very few people who sleep so heavily that they can't become conscious to some extent while they're asleep. Now you know this is true. How many, might I ask, in the audience? How many of you have had a dream of falling? And you have said, rather than hit the ground, which would be damned unpleasant, you have said to yourselves, to hell with this, I'm not going to fall any further. You wake yourselves up. Yes, of course. Or to put it more simply, how many of you fall out of bed at night? Not many, because you are vaguely aware that the edge of the bed is there and that you're not going to keep turning in that direction. You are faintly conscious. And it is that faint consciousness that exists in everyone that needs to be evoked and taken further. Learn to sleep lightly. In other words, learn to be partly conscious while you are asleep. You are then in a state of yoga. To be conscious whilst the physical body is out of action, healthily out of action and sleep, is yoga. Learn to sleep lightly. How often haven't you had a nightmare? You're being chased by red Indians. Just as the big chief is stretching out his hand to grab you by the hair and scalp you, you say, right, hold it, that's enough. I don't want to go any further than that, thank you. You have been sufficiently involved in the situation to become conscious while you're asleep. If you were sufficiently involved in the esoteric, you could do anything if you were fully committed. But unfortunately, even for those aspirants like yourselves on the path, less